Hi there, I'm Daniel, and this is the Interactive Design and Prototyping Enrichment video series. Today I'm going to give you a walkthrough of how to use Twitter Bootstrap. As a recap, Twitter Bootstrap provides you with all the components you need to build nice layouts on a website so that you don't have to write your own custom layout code. Bootstrap's components allow you to design layouts using a grid system, which we'll talk about when we discuss visual design in class. Bootstrap also makes it easy for components to respond dynamically based on the screen size. In order to use Twitter Bootstrap, you're going to need to refer to the Twitter Bootstrap documentation a lot. You can find this at http://twitter.github.com/bootstrap. Now I'll walk you through the basics by rebuilding the layout of the Awesome Start page. The first step is to download the Twitter Bootstrap files and unpack them. You can see that all the files are in a Bootstrap folder. We'll use that as the main folder for our web page. I'll create a blank HTML page and insert the sample Get Started code, which you can find from the documentation. Remember that these files are already included in the Awesome Start project that you can clone from. I'm going to start by creating a fixed layout container, which can be done by making a div with the class container and putting all my design code inside that div from this point forward. I'm then going to insert a navigation bar. The code for the navigation bar is found in the components page of the documentation. According to the documentation, if I want the navigation bar to stick on the top of the page, I'll need to add the navbar-fixed-top class to the navbar div, as well as add a 40 pixel margin to the top of the body. And voila, a pretty navigation bar is inserted. Next, I'm going to add some content. I plan to have two columns, one left larger column and one right smaller column. Twitter Bootstrap follows a grid system. By default, a page is split into 12 invisible columns. Everything that you make with the grid system will simply align itself. For my design, for example, I've decided that the left side will take 8 columns while the right will take 4. I will start by making a new row. This can be done by creating a div with the class row. Then I'll be making 2 more divs with the width I want by specifying the numbers. In my example, I want my left column to take 8 columns in the grid, so I define the class as span8. The left column will take 4 columns, so I will be defining the class as span4. Next, I can put in my content. You notice that on the right section, I actually have a form. There are some standards I can follow on the documentation to make my form prettier, such as applying a style to the button and merging the button with the text input. Again, you can create a pretty looking button and text box by finding the HTML in the base CSS forms section of the documentation and copying and pasting the code into your file. Finally, I can add some content in a new row below it by once again defining a new row using the divs with the row class. And there you have it, a simple multi-column design just like that. Now let's make it responsive. According to the documentation, making it responsive is a matter of adding a few lines into our HTML file. First, we need to modify the header to include a different version of Bootstrap, one that can handle responsive designs. To do that, go to the scaffolding page of the documentation and find this code in the responsive section. Copy and paste this code just below the original reference to the CSS file. Note that the reference to the responsive CSS in the sample is different, so be sure to remove the words assets to make it work. Now, the navigation bar needs to be modified, and once again the documentation shows us how. Begin by making a backup of the unordered list containing all the menu items within your existing navigation bar. You can then go to the navigation bar's responsive reference in the components page, copy the code for the new navigation bar, and replace your old navigation bar with the new one. Remember to put back the navbar-fixed-top class to the navbar div if you want it to stick to the top. Next, paste the list you backed up earlier within the div with the nav-collapse class. Anything in this div will appear only if the screen is large enough and collapse into a menu if the screen is small. And that's it. The navbar is now completely responsive. Now, when I resize the browser, you'll notice that the layouts begin to change to become more suitable for smaller devices. You've just made yourself a responsive design that's beautiful. Don't forget to check out the documentation at twitter.github/bootstrap. And remember that even their documentation page is built using Twitter Bootstrap. So if you see something that you like on the site or in their examples that you can't find in the documentation, just right-click and view the source code. Speaking of which, did you know that the Google Chrome browser, which I'm using right now, comes with a set of powerful developer tools? You can get them by clicking on this icon, choosing the Tools menu, and clicking Developer Tools. The developer tools provide some powerful functionality, including a sources tab that lets you see all the JavaScript files that have been loaded for this page, as well as an inspect element function that can be activated by clicking on the magnifying glass icon at the bottom and choosing any element to view its code and its CSS properties. So that's a quick look at Twitter Bootstrap. Let us know if you have any questions.